Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is one of those games that breaks all the norms. A game that is now on its 10th year that is still played by millions and is one of the most successful in Nintendo's history, only being number 2 to Wii Sports. Its charming, incredibly fun gameplay is like no other and has pushed the boundaries of gaming to its limit with its now 96 tracks, sitting at the centre of all its success, brimming with brilliant design, personality and just superb gameplay. These tracks are at the heart of all the success. But while some are works of art that define the game, other tracks tend to instead define the word Borefest. So it only seems right that we have a go at ranking them all, worst to best, to find out what is the best Mario Kart 8 track ever. But before we begin, this list was decided by my stream chat as we voted for all 96 together to find out the very best. So if your favourite isn't at the top, why not leave your top 10 tracks in the comments section below for me to check out later. And whilst you're down there, why not subscribe as well? We're on our way to 5,000 subscribers, but I want to hit 10k by the end of the year, so your support means everything to me, and I'm so very grateful. But with that being said, enough messing around. Let's get started with 96th place. Dry Desert. Starting with the F tier tracks, which honestly are the only tracks I wouldn't have in the game, and if there's one example that of course forgets everything that makes Mario Kart so awesome, it's Dry Desert. There's basically 3 rules to any Mario Kart track. Be fun to drive, have a badass personality, whether that's the design of the track or even the music, and finally, be competitive. And somehow, this track manages to break all 3. It's not fun to drive in the slightest, having a good start, but then just sections that are boring, as well as the desert, which is just the worst theme ever, by the way, and Nintendo seem to do it again and again and again. And if that wasn't bad enough, the track has a massive shortcut at the end that basically means no matter what position you're in coming into the final turn, unless you have some sort of boost, you're definitely not coming first. It's just so ridiculously boring that even after dozens upon dozens of tracks that were added, it still manages to be the very worst. But at least that means the only way is up, as we head on next to 95th place. Berlin Byways. Oh god, where do I even start? So basically with the release of the Booster Course Pack, Nintendo brought over a bunch of tracks from Mario Kart Tour, which makes sense because it cuts down on development time and so on, but that of course meant bringing over a bunch of city tracks from Tour, which might be easy, but each city has a few different tracks that all merge into each other, and Nintendo in their wisdom didn't just take the best of these tracks, no, they merged them all together so each lap is different, which just ends up making them all very confusing, with you having no idea where to go to. And that's where Berlin Byway misses up the most. It's literally almost unplayable as a casual or newbie to the game, because there's about 20 different routes that you have to go on, and not in a fun way like Yoshi's Valley that we'll get to later on this list. No, this is so confusing, which is a shame because Berlin's a cool city, but it's just ruined by being incredibly confusing. However, that's only one part Nintendo messed up with its city tracks, because up next is 94th, Tokyo Blur. Along with being just completely confusing and hard to understand, the other issues that plagued the city tracks is that they were all made for a mobile app, not for a console. So of course they had to tone back a lot of what makes Mario Kart fun, which when translated back to console means they're just boringly plain. And that is Tokyo's biggest issue. This race is boring. It's so nothing. You think Nintendo would want to make freaking Tokyo seem fun, but no, it's just the most forgettable nothingness of all the tracks in this game, no matter the lap you're doing. How could you mess this up? It honestly ends up with this track just being awful, and along with that, with this being the first booster course pack, the graphics were awful, meaning this course lands here alongside Berlin in the F tier. 93rd place, Los Angeles Laps. Surprise 3 in a row as we complete our awful city tracks with Los Angeles Laps, which pretty much falls into the same pitfalls as Tokyo, of course just being completely boring. Like, I know LA is kind of a soulless city in real life, but this is a video game. I want to be racing through Hollywood sets and theme parks instead of a literal oil field. Like, what prompted Nintendo to think that would be fun? Why did they think this is what they should be aiming for? It doesn't help that this is the only section that isn't just a city street or generic beach area. Like, this truly misses the mark in a big way. And trust me, these are just the worst 3. There'll be a lot more city tracks very soon. 92nd, Toad Circuit. Look, we all know the circuit tracks in past Mario Karts have been a bit boring, but why did Nintendo have to pick the most uninventive one of them all? Toad Circuit honestly feels like they had to make a track as quickly as possible and went, sure, that'll do. And then they needed to make a track as quickly as possible for the booster course pack, and they were like, you know what, that'll do yet again. It's just boring, uninspired, and downright lazy. I mean, look at these textures. Where is the love? Where is the care? It's just so nothing, and that's why Toad Circuit is here. 91st, Donut Plains 3. Yeah, that's right, the Banana Cup is that much of a stinker that it's not only got one awful track, but 2. Donut Plains 3 does at least have something going for it, with its underwater section and innovative shortcuts, but then there's not much you can do with an SNES track to save them from just feeling a bit stale. I mean, they prove later on that you can do something, but here it's just to fill the numbers. Bland and stale, just like the worst type of donuts. With that being said, however, we now move on to our D tier tracks, which have their merits, but are still kind of just there when it comes down to it. And we start with 90th, Cloudtop Cruise. God, I don't get why people like this track. Thank goodness people on stream agreed with me, because honestly, this track is not fun. Like, it's not boring. I like the theme, I think it's interesting and it's very cool to drive on Bowser's ship and in the clouds and so on. But overall, I just think it lacks so much depth, especially for an original course. And that coupled with the fact none of it flows, making it extremely hard to drive on, meant the people voted, and this race is not it. 89th, New York Minute. I really don't have much to say about this one, like, it's just there. It's just so little to do with New York, it just has nothing to do with the city, like, even its icons are just boring. Central Park is just put in at a random point, and honestly, I can't even remember going through Town Square. It's just so boring and dull, and it's lucky it's this high, to be honest, because it's so nothing. 88th, Madrid Drive. It's a bit better than New York Minute, and that's only because it has a football stadium at the end. But like, nothing about this course really has anything. It's just yet another city track with barely anything memorable. And I feel bad saying that because I get it's the last one they added, so like it can't do so much different, but we will get to some city tracks eventually that actually do something. And this one, sadly, does not. 87th, Rosalina's Ice World. This track is just so there that it's not even funny. Like, it feels like yet again they had the rush to put in a snow track for the 3DS and made a track that doesn't even make sense for the theme. Like, what does Rosalina have to do with ice? And even worse, they then decided to bring it to Mario Kart 8. On the very last DLC pack, like, there was so many you could have put in, and it's just not a track you wanted in such a legendary game. It makes no sense. But hey, at least it has an allegory for global warming. that's interesting, at the very least. 86th, Mario Kart Circuit DS. This is going to be one of a few Mario Kart circuits that just doesn't do anything creative in this game. Like, seriously, I don't know why throughout Mario Kart history, Mario's circuits are just nothing. For example, with this track, the most I'll give you is the Piranha Plant enemies are pretty cool. But they are just at the very start, and then you're going through a very nothing forest, and then after that, you have a few terrible turns to make, and hey, that's the track. Yeah, it's just there. I don't know why they added it of all the tracks in the DLC, but hey, if you like the DS, it's here. 85th, Mario Kart Circuit 3. For some reason, Nintendo seemed to think that Mario Kart Circuit 3 is some sort of god track that deserves to be in every single game in Mario Kart history. And here we are, yet again, where it's being used over and over and over so many other amazing tracks. And like, yeah, it's cool to drive, but do you have to make it so boring? It feels like they just ported it over from the SNES, and there's so many SNES tracks that do so much more. It's just going around the same flat look and the same boring background. Like, it gives nothing. If they were to give this track as much attention as they did to Bowser Castle 3, which, spoiler, is pretty high up on the ranking, maybe it could be higher. But for now, it's just taking up another slot to a track that could have been way more fun. 84th, Bone Dry
Dunes.
Well, it seems pretty universal that Bone Dry Ruins is just not a like track. And look, if I was Nintendo, I would be scratching my head trying to figure out why as well. Because it's a unique theme and the track isn't too hard considering it's in the Lightning Cup. And well, like, it's okay I guess. But even I don't like this track. And I think the thing is, it's just a bit too okay. Like, it's not fun or whimsical, and it's not even that good to drive around. It's just meh throughout. And in Mario Kart, that's the biggest crime of all. 83rd, Water Park. Look, when it comes to certain tracks, it becomes more about missed potential more than anything. And if any track were to sum up that idea, it would be Water Park. Cause damn, there's about 100 ideas that could have been so much better than what it turned out to be. Which is basically just one long turn in an underwater section with like a tram track or something. I mean, I don't even know what's going on, but it's boring as hell. And when this could have been a huge water park slide or a Splash Mountain type ride, it just ends up being disappointing. 82nd, Sunset Wilds. Look, I don't have much to say about Sunset Wilds. Like, its biggest crime is it does nothing but look pretty. Like, the sunset effect sort of counterbalances the whole not actually being a track that goes from night to day like the original for me, but really it just has nothing in it. What little personality it has doesn't really do anything, and it's not even that fun to drive, so that's why it stays in D tier, where it belongs. 81st, Cheeseland. The definition of a cheater track. This race will go down in history as just one of the stupidest tracks ever. Because basically, unless you're miles ahead, you'll almost never finish in first at the end. Because the shortcuts are just crazy. Like, if you get a golden mushroom, then you're just going to boost past everyone. And honestly, even though the rest of the track is fairly okay, the fact it's so stupid at the end, it just can't go any higher. 80th, Mario Kart Circuit 8. You know, because it's the one for 8. This track honestly feels like it was made for testing. Like, it was a track and they tested the game on it, figuring out if the anti-gravity was going to work, and then decided, hey, we'll build a race on this. And obviously, like, they didn't because it's the game's signature track. It was on the original cover and basically all the marketing. but it's so lacking in any personality. It's so boring and scraped together that they literally decided to change the cover for 8 Deluxe. Overall, I just think that they were focused on making the Helix an 8, and then they chucked in the rest because this just stinks and definitely deserves to be all the way down here. What a fall from grace. 79th, Amsterdam Drift. Whether it's going through tulip fields or going in the flowing river through the city, Amsterdam Drift actually has some personality, making it a somewhat good track. Like, I can tell Amsterdam apart from other city tracks, which, I mean, some of them just feel exactly the same, so it's an achievement. However, once again, it's just how confusing it is as a track that lets it down. Like, I get it, you wanted to be quirky with some of your layout designs and not make it so every lap was the same, but honestly, it's better than going out of bounds each lap because you didn't know where the next turn was. And in the end, that's what lets Amsterdam down, ultimately landing it in D tier, along with its brother in arms. 78th, Rome Avanti. You see, the thing about Rome is whilst it's cool that you get to drive in the Colosseum, and like, it's nice, it's got the nighttime thing going on and that's kind of cool, but then anytime it isn't doing that, it feels just like another city track. And there's no bigger crime than feeling like another city track, as I said, again and again. Like, I enjoy the Italian aesthetic, but it's just a bunch of roads yet again that loop around and get your head in the twists. So like the others, it ends up being low. 77th, Merry Mountain. There's a lot of snow tracks in Mario Kart, but there isn't really one that is so Christmassy than Merry Mountain. From the Christmas towns that are actually pretty cool, to the snow slopes, to even the giant amount of presents and candy canes and more. And yet, even though everyone loves Christmas, this track is just lacking. Like, half the track is just a giant straight to the finish, and then the rest is basically just a circle. I mean, not really, but it's almost the same thing. And well, unless you're a certain sweet track, then to most people, being a circle is a crime. But I guess we'll find out about that more later. 76th, Cheap Cheap Beach. There's only so much you can do when the theme is beach, like the Barbie movie taught us before. And yes, Cheap Cheap is quite a cool race, with the actual beach section with the open space allowing you to drive through multiple routes being a great idea, but unfortunately it's kind of short and doesn't do much with the concept, other than beach. But like, it's an okay map, and definitely one I enjoy, but with the cursed community vote, it means it unfortunately missed out on C tier, which is our next lot of tracks that are all honestly pretty solid from this point forward, just missing out on being great. And we're starting with 75th, Toad's Turnpike. Look, of course they had to bring back another 8 track to this game. I mean, it makes so much sense. But along with that, Toad Turnpike is one of the easiest car tracks to do as well, so it makes perfect sense to include, but with that being said, it kind of stinks. I mean, the cars aren't hard to dodge, you basically just need to be on the inside of the track, and yeah, it's not that great when you get down to it, but you know, for being a beta Moonview highway, it's at least got its place in this game. 74th, Twisted Mansion. When it came to deciding the placement of this track, I really thought I'd have to fight to have it this low, but I think it says something when all of the chat basically agreed with me that this track is just lame. I mean, it's kind of lame when the biggest part of a track all about ghosts is an underwater section with basically nothing. It's just that boring. Really, the best section of the track is literally at the end with the statues, but even then you have a huge shortcut right next to it, which can really cause you to drop down just because you didn't get boosts in your last item box. All that being said, the only thing that's scary in this track is how boring it is. I mean, it's still okay, but it's just a bit boring. 73rd, Bangkok Rush. We finally get a city track that just screams personality. Bangkok Rush at times feels so different to any other city track in the game, and honestly I love that. Like, the first lap on the water is so good, and when you jump off the car park and onto the marketplace tents, that's cool. It's just a shame that the rest of the track is so boring. Like, it falls yet again into being just another awful city track, and that's just so disappointing, because it definitely had something there for a moment. Which is exactly the same for our next track. 72nd, Vancouver Velocity. The first lap of this track is legitimately the best any city track can get. Like, it's incredible. The fun you can have with the anti-gravity section, jumping from bridge to bridge, all the chaos that ensues, which is just so much fun. But then, it becomes just another boring city track, and like, not a good one. Like, the ice rink is good, but the rest is so dull. So incredibly dull. The only reason it gets this high is legitimately that first section, but the rest is just such a disappointment. 71st, Ice Ice Outpost. What a boring track to add as DLC. Like, an original track for paid DLC, and they made it this one. Like, I agree, the music's pretty good, but that doesn't really make up for anything else in this track. Like, making a track on ice, it would have been cooler than these rubbish platforms, and it just gives nothing. Like, ooh, 2 ways to go. Yoshi Valley has about 12. You've got nothing, Ice Ice Outpost. Be better. 70th, Paris Promenade. Paris benefits a lot from being the first city track, because apart from introducing the concept of them with all the craziness they bring, it basically falls into the same trap of being another city track, being just roads, with little to nothing in terms of personality in it at all. The nice thing is it's easy to understand, the landmarks are pretty good, and going backwards is always a win, but otherwise it's just another city track. And trust me, I'm getting bored of saying that by now. 69th, Boo Lake. Look, I know it's low after the votes, but I do want to start off by saying that Nintendo did a really good job translating this from the original form on the Game Boy Advance, because it was basically nothing to do with a lake, and now you're literally diving in and dodging a haunted shipwreck, which is pretty cool. It just misses out because it's a bit plain, but without straying away from the source material, it probably couldn't get any higher. But I still think Nintendo should be given prompts for what they managed to do with this track. 68th, Rainbow Road Mario Kart 8 Edition. Look, I like what they tried to do here. I really appreciate trying to mix up the Rainbow Road formula by making it a space station and going off that theme. Like, it's cool and different, but in doing that, it misses out on what makes Rainbow Road so wonderful. The whimsy, the chaos. If anything, this Rainbow Road just feels too easy, too robotic, and it's just sad to see, because it could have been so much cooler, especially when we consider some of the other new tracks to the base game. It still has some charm, but overall, it ends up here for being disappointing. 67th, Sydney Sprint. Okay, we're finally getting to the good tour city tracks, and that's because they don't feel like city tracks at all. And yes, I get it, Sydney is a bunch of roads yet again, but for some reason, it just feels like it has so much more personality than that. Like, whether you're going to the Opera House, or seeing the theme park in the background that reminds me a lot of Baby Park, or just the theme of the track, it feels a lot more Mario Kart than any of the city tracks before it. I mean, it's still a city track, so it has its faults, but at least it has something. 66th, Sky Garden. Look, a lot has been said about the changes to this track, but not many people talk about the fact that even though it's basically changed the whole race, it's still kinda boring. Like, there's not much to do at all, it's still fun and such at parts, but if it wasn't for the bouncing mushrooms or the last second shortcut, then this track would be lacking. Which is fairly crazy to say when they basically changed the whole track. But I guess that's the case for a lot of the first booster pack tracks. 65th, Riverside
Park.
Riverside
Park
is nice. It doesn't do a lot, but when you think of what the original was on the Game Boy Advance, what they managed to do here is pretty good. Like, it's fun to drive, it's got a lot of chaos in it, and you get to jump through a waterfall at the end, which is always amazing. However, even with that being said, it doesn't do a lot in terms of coolness. It just sort of ends up being not memorable at all. And that's all I sort of have to say. It's just there when all things are said and done. But hey, at least it's still good. 64th, Excitebike Arena. Look, obviously this race is just a massive circle with a bunch of jumps. And yeah, that does mean it's not incredible. But what I will say on its side is that it sticks perfectly to Excitebike and its gameplay. And for that, I have to give it props. It's not high up on the list, but it definitely hits the mark. And I got to respect that. 63rd, GBA Mario Circuit. I find it interesting just how high this track made it on this list, especially when you consider how low some of the other tracks are that are similar to it. But I think I figured out exactly why. It's because this track is fun. Like, it's legit just a good track to play on, with lots of cool turns and shortcuts, and most of all, it feels the most like an actual go-kart track out of any in the game. You know, if a go-kart track had a massive anti-gravity section with a jump on it, but you know, still a go-kart track, I guess. 62nd, Bowser's Castle. In the grand history of Mario Kart, Bowser's Castle has always stood out as one of the very best tracks, from game to game to game. It's always brilliant and only outdone by its sibling, Rainbow Road. So maybe that's why Mario Kart 8's Bowser's Castle is this far down, because just like this game's Rainbow Road, it just doesn't match up. Like, it's still okay maybe, even bordering on good as a race, like with the death traps and all the lasers and the huge Bowser in it, but even so, it just doesn't hit the right spot in Bowser Castle history, and I reckon that's why it landed so far down in the end. 61st, SNES's Rainbow Road. Why is this Rainbow Road just slapped in the middle of a cup? Like, that's just not right whatsoever. And I literally hear no one talk about it. But I guess it is the Rainbow Road that's literally put in every single game, just like Mario Circuit 3. However, unlike Mario Circuit 3, it's okay. It pales in comparison to the other Rainbow Roads, but like, it's from an old game. It's still Rainbow Road, it's still got all the epicness, the difficulty, the whimsy, and you absolutely have to love it. But now we hit the big time with the B tiers. Every single track from here on out is at least good, if not great. So strap yourselves in, because we still have 60 to go, starting with 60th. Dolphin Shores. Look, this was the first track that actually confused me with how people rated it. I mean, to me, this track is yet another banger in the incredible Star Cup. But like, I get it. I do think it ended up being in the right place by kicking off our B tier, because whilst there's a lot of joy in tricking off the eel's back or jumping with dolphins, or whatever the Mario universe's equivalent of dolphins is, the track still has some things that bring it down, whether it's not flowing well or how difficult it is for newcomers. But all in all, it's still a good race when it comes down to it. 59th, Piranha Plant Slide. This is yet another where I did not expect it to be this low, but the audience spoke and I kinda get it. Whilst there's a lot of fun to be had in the idea of going down a pipe from the Mario games, a concept that doesn't get done often enough, bear in mind, is a huge part of the actual game series. The reality is, there's just not much you can do with it. Even so, I think they bring a lot of fun into the level, whether it's sliding down that first section or bursting out into the open at the end from the murky depths of the underwater pipe. It really does end up bringing that Mario Kart feeling, although it's right at the end, so maybe a little too late. 58th, Athens Dash. Who knew to make a good tour track, you'd have to not base it on yet another very generic city, but do something completely different and base it on ruins instead. Athens Dash is so much fun and actually feels like a Mario Kart track, which compared to the other tour tracks is basically a miracle to do. But it's legitimately so much better to just not be on the road, but instead be racing through incredible architecture of the ancient Greeks. It's just so much better than before. I can't really state how good it is compared to the others we've talked about already. And yes, it's still a confusing drive overall, which is why it's B tier. But hey, we still have 2 city tracks left to B tier. 57th, Hyrule Circuit. So this one might be a bit controversial because people adore the idea that Legend of Zelda is in Mario Kart. They love the idea that Nintendo Kart could be a thing like Smash Brothers or something else. But the truth is, it's just a boring, usual Mario Kart course. Like, the only thing Zelda is the castle and that cool bit where you unlock the shortcut jump section by hitting all the keys. That's a good idea, but the rest of the course is kinda nothing. Retexturing coins and piranha plants can only get you so far, and that is in B tier, which, I mean, it's still good at least. 56th, Shroom Ridge. This track is just a lot of fun. Like, it's not changing the world or anything, but throughout it's just a pretty fun, challenging time, from dodging the cars to drifting through the tricky tight turns, to even that sick shortcut at the end. If there's one detractor, it's probably that if you have a big lead, you're almost certain to win, with it being another car track. So maybe it could be a bit more competitive. But overall, it's just a very solid Mario Kart track. 55th, Sherbetland. I think there's a reality where this track stinks, where the ice makes it hard to drive, where the alternate routes are just annoying, and where the lovely theme gets lost to just being another snow track. Luckily, we don't live in that reality, because everything I just said is the complete opposite. This is a good time to race, and feels like they put a lot of love into it, especially when translating it from the GameCube. So good job, Nintendo. This is a fun track. 54th, Mario Kart Stadium. What a way to start this game. Mario Kart Stadium, in my opinion, is the very best first track in the series, bringing a superb atmosphere that really feels like you're starting this game in a huge event, alongside being a very fun track that works perfectly for anyone new to the game, with its corners perfect for drifting, an anti-gravity zone introducing it that's super fun, and tons of good shortcuts. That being said though, it's still the first track of the game and it does lack a bit in personality, being a bit too simplistic when it comes down to it, which is why it's not any higher. 53rd, Wario Stadium. Just like its brother Mario Kart Stadium, this track does feel like an event, except it's not a brilliant opening ceremony, but instead one of those American car wreck events where they just smash into each other and then a monster truck comes out at the end. Pretty perfect for Wario overall, to be fair, and a fun track. 52nd, Rock Mountain. This track is basically the reason gliding was invented, because it's almost the whole track, and yet it still rules. Flying across the valley, dodging boulders as they make their way down the hill, or taking a massive shortcut through the trees. This track is just brilliant in so many ways. And yet, if you're watching this gameplay, you'll know I suck at it. So it's lucky that other people got to vote, because otherwise it would be near the bottom. I'm just being honest. Also, Alpine Pass is a way better name, America. Change that now. 51st, Choco Mountain. Feel like I have to start off by saying, how does this look like chocolate at all? It's basically a muddy mountain. I mean, where does chocolate come into it whatsoever? Even so, it's definitely a fun track that has lots of daring and hype moments throughout. Even without the drop-off zone like we had in the N64 version, this part of the track is still so incredible, from the rocks falling down, basically being a jump scare each time, to trying to get that 2 item boxes at the end at the very edge of the cliff, to the sprint finish. It's so much chaos throughout, and is definitely a good time, even if it has nothing to do with chocolate. 50th, London Loop. I know some people are going to say I'm biased because I'm British and why is London Loop so high and everything. I mean, it's pretty much the same as every other boring city track, but you'd be forgetting this was ranked on stream, taking into account dozens of other people, including people from America like my girlfriend, to people from Germany and Holland, and all over the world basically. But with that being said, they're the ones in the wrong here. London Loop's boring as hell, and just another city track that does nothing fun whatsoever. I don't know why it's up here. Rule Britannia and all that, but why is it here? Why is it here at all? But it's not the best city track, because that honour goes to 49th, Singapore Speedway. This is a city track on just another level. Not only because of the gorgeousness of Singapore that raises the bar, but also how fun it is. This level does a really good job of keeping you off the roads, whether you're gliding over buildings or actually driving on some of the incredible architecture. It's just so much fun and just very cool to see something done differently in these races that just makes them stand out so much more. And yeah, it does become a city track at times, but it still manages to do something very different. And for that reason, it will take the crown as the best city tour track ever, which is a very low honour indeed. 48th, Neo Bowser City. Look, people talk about Rainbow Roads being the hardest in the game, but that is absolutely not the case, because Neo Bowser City takes the cake there. From the sharp winding turns to how small the track actually is, this is nearly impossible in 200cc to do, even as quite a good player, which I am, but still, it doesn't take away from it, because it's still a banger of a track that absolutely nails its theme. Like, the whole futuristic nature of the track is just so cool, and it reminds me of like the opening chase scene in Star Wars Attack of the Clones, that sort of city of the future that's got a bit of a dodgy side theme. It's just really cool, and honestly it makes it stand out. If only it wasn't so difficult, maybe it would be a little higher.
47.
Piranha Plant Cove. I feel like this track is pretty good, right? Like, better than where it is on the list, but also maybe it's worse than where it is on the list, because it just confuses me so much. And that's probably because it's a brand new brilliant track with lots of personality in camera, but it ends up being a bit murky and confusing, with some good sections and some not so fun at all. Like, it's a good track, but as it's the newest to the Mario Kart universe, maybe it'll go up and down in the future. But for now, it sits at B.
46.
Moo Moo Meadows. This track is a vibe. I mean, it's not difficult, it's not revolutionary, but when I think of Mario Kart, Moo Moo Meadows is always in my mind, because it's just a fun time. Dodging through the cows, tricking off the mole tunnels, and the music. It's just so good. It's so good. I love playing this track so much, And maybe if it had some more depth, it would be a bit higher than it is. But that would probably take away from how amazing this track actually is. 45th, Yoshi's Island. I'm not sure how to feel about Yoshi's Island. Like, they seem to want to do another Hyrule Circuit or Animal Crossing race, but they didn't have the budget or time, so just decided to do a Yoshi track and make it based off his games. And then it's basically the same as a Mario Kart track, but a bit more Yoshi themed. And you know what? It does bring something, but not much because of that. Anyway, even so, it's really fun and it's chaotic and just superb. It's very Yoshi still, which I think it manages to do despite being a Mario Kart track. And the ending has to be shouted out for that secret shortcut because that's amazing and it's definitely pretty fun. 44th, Dragon Driftway. Imagine racing on a dragon. That is just so cool. And in this fun-ass race that brings so much style to it and just has to be respected, from the jumping in the dragon's mouth to the flying around the dojo that is just brilliant theme to the flying around the tail. This is just a brilliant DLC course that deserves props. It can be quite hard to drive at times, and near the end of the track it does get a bit boring, but it's driving on a dragon. It absolutely deserves a lot of love. 43rd, Sweet Sweet Canyon. Is it any wonder that a game coming out a year later than Wreck-It Ralph would have a level that's a bit too similar to Sugar Rush? Sweet Sweet Canyon is a fun drive throughout that brings so much energy, so much sugar to its core, and the fact you're driving through a candy land is amazing. I mean, the water does look a bit too much like pee, but it's Sugar Rush. It's basically you're playing Sugar Rush, and I want that so much in a Mario Kart game. So this is perfect. 42nd, Ninja Hideaway. Look, I know a lot of people love this track, but you've got to remember this was rated by a lot of people, all of varying ability and skill levels. So evidently, Ninja Hideaway can be a bit confusing at times, whether it's the shifting platforms or secret shortcuts or multiple routes. All that can definitely make it a wonderful course, especially compared to the first lot of DLC tracks. I mean, it's just super cool, but the complicated nature of this track can definitely mean that casual fans or newbies are going to struggle. Even so, it definitely deserves of its place this high up, perhaps even higher. 41st, N64 Rainbow Road. I adore this Rainbow Road, like it's incredible. On the original game, this was the course that really ended Mario Kart, and it felt so breathtakingly epic. From the soundtrack to the sensational track design to seeing the world down below with all the fireworks and the train, this was such a vibe. Unfortunately, that's just me, and apparently other people found it too short, so it couldn't be any higher. And that's a crime, I tell you, because this deserves a lot better. 40th, Royal Raceway. Sitting pretty in B tier, Royal Raceway is just such a brilliant theme, despite being quite a simple one. Its atmosphere and music makes up for it tenfold, and this race is just amazing. I mean, it's not the biggest thing. I mean, it doesn't have the biggest theme in the world, but it's just so much fun to drive. It brings so much high energy, and honestly, I can't remember a time I had a boring race there. Maybe its shortcut heavy ending does bring it down a little bit, but it absolutely deserves a lot of high praise. 39th, DK Jungle. Look, the DK tracks in Mario Kart are always winners, and this is just another one that brings exactly what you need from any DK race. A fun-filled time with plenty of tricks, shortcuts and chaos involved. And the coolest part is this race definitely feels like a Donkey Kong game, being based on his games and not Mario Kart, and that makes it so much cooler than some of the other tracks. And whilst that does get it some brownie points, it doesn't compare to the fun of the other Donkey Kong tracks, which will come later in this list. 38th, Thwomp Ruins. Now this is a track. Thwomp Ruins perfectly combines everything about 8 Deluxe together, being a superbly interesting track that has skill and strategy to win, whilst also having a wonderful theme that, whilst is quite simple, works so well in this game. The absolute best part of the track has to be the brilliantly done multi-route section that perfectly includes normal karting, gliding, underwater and anti-gravity in a way that no other track has done before. And alongside the rest of this brilliant track, it goes down a tree and absolutely deserves to be here. 37th, Yoshi Valley. Infinite potential is something that you would find weird to be in a racing game, but it's possible in the case of Yoshi Valley. With its incredible starting section of the course that you can take any number of routes on, that just adds so much to this track. That would be if the wooden section wasn't obviously the quickest way to go. Even so, Yoshi Valley does bring a lot of character and charm to this race, and I love taking all the different routes, even if it does hamper my chances of getting the victory. But the main thing is it's just something different, and that's so awesome to have in this wonderful game. 36th, Super Bell Subway. This track falls under the Let's Make a Form of Transport a racetrack, and honestly, they work incredibly well every single time, and this isn't the only track you will see. As you plunge into the cleanest subway in the world, I mean honestly sparkling, and battle against your fellow racers in what is a superbly diverse track that brings you so many different options and ways to go, whether you can drive on a train or on the track, and it's just superb. I mean, you're driving on a train. That is so incredible. 35th, Shy Guy Falls. Look, I just talked about racing on a train, and then this race, you race up and down a waterfall. What more can you ask for? I mean, it helps that the course is filled with the best Mario Kart character being Shy Guy, of course. I mean, you get to drive up a waterfall. Add to that the fact you can literally drive under the people racing up the waterfall. I mean, it's such a good track that deserves a lot of love. I mean, it's basically struck gold. 34th, Snowland. If I'm honest, I didn't expect Snowland to be this high up on the list, but it turns out people just love snow tracks. They're basically the opposite of desert tracks, so that makes sense. And with Snowland, it gives you exactly what it says on the label. Whether you're flying through the trees or slipping on the ice, all whilst trying to dodge the penguins, or even taking the insanely overpowered shortcut that Nintendo still don't seem to patch out, Snowland is a really good course, no matter the skill level. No matter the age, it's a cool time. Please don't stop watching. Ignore the pun. 33rd, Sky High Sunday. Look, I know Sky High Sunday is basically a glorified version of Excite Bike Arena, but when you chuck in anti-gravity and a cool theme with a bit of inspiration from Sweet Sweet Canyon, apparently it just works. From the get-go, this track starts out awesomely as you dive into Ice Cream Madness, literally driving through a cone to get your first set of items, and from there, it just gets more and more crazy, from the wild floaty jumps to the huge final corner, which always brings so much chaos. This track is just a bright, colourful, sugary mess, and it works brilliantly. 32nd, Yoshi Circuit. It's a race that's literally designed as Yoshi's outline. Like, that's just so silly, and yet it works so well. And not only that, it's just the whole vibe of this track. Like, it feels like you're driving around a small island town that just loves racing. Like the Isle of Man bike race that's just so wholesome. Like the fact it's just a simple track down to the bare minimum, but the actual effort to make a race around Yoshi's circuit. That's what this game's about. But unfortunately, it just misses out on being A tier, which is just the most incredible tracks that deserve so much love. So let's get started as we dive in with 31st, Animal Crossing. What differs between this track and say Legend of Zelda is just this track actually fully goes in to the Animal Crossing theme. Like everything around the track is so Animal Crossing, from driving past the villagers to dodging Rossetti, even going down to the beaches. It's just so Animal Crossing, and that dive into the actual world of the game is just what makes it work so well. It's brilliantly done and absolutely makes this track a standout that just sneaks into A tier. But before we continue onwards, please consider subscribing. It would really mean the world to me, especially after all the effort that me and my editor have put into this video. You can also find them in the description, so please consider subscribing to them as well. It would really mean the world to both of us if you did. Anyway, let's continue onwards with 30th, Daisy Cruiser. You know what would be fun? If you were able to race on a boat. Like, imagine how chaotic that would be, going through a cruise, dodging tables, racing through hallways and around swimming pools, with all the shakes, jumps and motions that being on a cruise would give. That would be so much fun. And that's exactly what this track does. Like, it manages to translate the chaos that would be perfectly into a video game, and brings so much personality. And like, that's what Mario Kart does so well with the rest of these tracks. From here on out, they're just insanely good at making fun tracks with a brilliant theme, and that's why they're all in A tier and above. Well, except for one more before that, which is 29th, Baby Park. God damn, Baby Park has to be the simplest concept ever, and yet it's utter genius. As a tiny circle can somehow become one of the most fun tracks in Mario Kart history. I mean, lap 1 can seem quite boring, but the further and further you get into this race, and the more the music ramps up, just the more chaotic it feels as you begin to not even know your placement in the race as you lap more and more other cars. It's just a beautiful symphony of craziness and chaos. I also want to give a shout out to the theme on this race, because as someone who's raced this track for 6 hours straight before, I don't think that the background and all the theme park stuff gets mentioned enough. It's really cool and deserves some recognition somewhere, so it has to be in this video. But yes, what a track. 28th, Calamari Desert. Now this is how you do a desert track. I can imagine the first iteration of Calamari Desert might have been further down on the ranking, but with the changes made and the laps all being different, it's just amazing. I mean, you literally race towards a moving train. You know how sick that would have been if you got to do it on the Nintendo 64. Like, that would have blew little kids' minds everywhere. And now you get to do it, and it's incredible. A desert map, well done. Which is a huge rarity in this game, so well done, Nintendo. Only took you adding another 48 tracks, but you got it this time. 27th, Grumble Volcano. When the game originally came out over 10 years ago, Grumble Volcano and Moo Moo Meadows were the only Wii tracks in the game. And like, what a weird choice of two tracks, like completely opposite in every single way, but both incredibly fun. Grumble Volcano is just brilliant, gradually getting harder each lap, with parts of the land sinking into the lava, and to be honest, I think that's exactly what makes this track so amazing. That game design is rarely seen in any other track on the game, and it's chaotic as hell and makes for a super fun time for this track. Although it is kind of sad that you can't do the broken glitch jumps like on Wii, but oh well, it's probably for the best. 26th, Mute City. Our first of the F-Zero tracks, Mute City just radiates awesomeness, and honestly brings that F-Zero turbo speed action into Mario Kart, whether it's boosting through the first section, drifting through the tricky second, or soaring down to the finish on your last. It just brings so much personality and chaos that you just got to love. The music as well is just a banger and makes it feel so freaking awesome. It's honestly the perfect mix of Mario and F-Zero, and whilst it loses to its sister track, it's still 100% rocks. 25th, Moonview Highway. I'm just warning you now, there's a lot more Wii tracks in store, but as we start with Moonview Highway, we start with what on the original game felt like a kind of just their track. Like, to me at least. I know a lot of people love this track, but to me it was just there. And now in this game, it just feels like it's got so much more personality. It must be the graphics, I've got to say. It just must be the graphics, because this plays exactly the same as Wii. It's so much fun, dodging through traffic. It is the quintessential moving vehicle game on this game. Like, Toad Turnpike and Shroom Ridge are not on this level. It is so good. It's 100% so much fun. And luckily here, it gets 25th. That's certainly not something to sniff at anymore. 24th, Daisy Circuit. They were really loving Daisy in the final few tracks of DLC. I mean, 2 in the final 16 races is a bit crazy, but it makes sense, because these Daisy tracks are just so good. Like, this is actually the highest rated circuit track in this entire list, because it's just so nice. It feels like the Monaco of Mario Kart. It's got so much style and grace, and whether it's the sunset theme or the massive Daisy and Luigi circuits, which are adorable by the way, which is probably why I think mostly that it's like Monaco. But either way, it's just a beautiful track with something a bit different that ends up working perfectly in the end. 23rd, Cooper Cape. To me, Cooper Cape has always been one of the most fun Mario Kart tracks to drive through. I mean, from jumping over small gaps to doing a complete 180 turn to then the water section. Like, nothing excites me more in Mario Kart than the chaos of being propelled by water. And in Mario Kart 8, it keeps all this, as well as the final waterfall, which is perfect because it means you can get a shortcut if you take a certain way. It's such a fun track. However, the one thing letting this track down on this version is the fact the underwater pipe section is just so much simpler, going along with the 3DS version, and it kind of ruins the final last half of this course. Well, ruins is maybe a strong word, but it does make it worse, and due to that, it does miss out on being the very cream of the crop, but continues to be one of my most fun tracks ever. 22nd, Coconut Mall. This track is obviously a fan favourite. I mean, from its introduction in Mario Kart Wii, it's just held the legacy in Mario Kart's history of being one of the best tracks ever. So maybe you're wondering why it's so low, and it's simple. Capitalism ruined Coconut Mall. The soul has basically been ripped from it, from the elevators to the shops to, of course, the boring car park that is definitely the biggest downgrade. It just feels like Coconut Mall went from a very family-friendly small mall that helped small businesses that loved their customers to this soulless corporate mall with half the stores not even open and the rest being huge brands that are on the edge of bankruptcy. It's horrific and definitely shows what 2024 basically is. That being said, it's still Coconut Mall, so it's still a banger and well worth the honour of A tier. I mean, maybe it should have been higher, but this is how it ended up. It's Coconut Mall, let's be honest. 21st, Wario's Gold Mine. Nintendo just come up with the wildest ideas for tracks, and it works just brilliantly. And that is on show with Warrior's Gold Mine. I mean, it's a mining track, and yet the twists, turns, up and downs just perfectly transfer into a racing course that is so much fun, and the fact it's Wario themed, of course it's Wario themed, it had to be. Honestly, I know the changes from Wii make it a bit more questionable, but it brings a whole new level of charm and works superbly with the Mario Kart 8 physics, and evidently people agree with me here, because it finishes here in A. 20th, Big Blue. Look, this track was such a amazing ending track for the first ever Mario Kart 8. But on Deluxe, of course, now with the DLC, it's a bit lower, but it's still amazing. It still mixes the formula up from Rainbow Road so massively, and it's just a wonderful F-Zero track. There's so much fun about this track, from chucking around incredible turns that are pushing you back and forward, or jumping you over huge chasms, because the gravity on this map is so crazy, and reminds me a bit of the Wii Ultra shortcuts. It's just so much fun, and had the ultimate end of a Mario Kart tournament vibe. But now they've added tons of CLC. But it's still amazing, so yay. 19th, Bowser Castle 3. Now this is how you do an SNES course. This is why the others were so far down on the list, because this one actually does something. Like, it goes out there and changes the formula. They could have done what they did with Mario Kart Circuit 3 and had it basically the same as the first game, but they didn't, and it makes such a huge difference, because not only is this circuit so much cooler now, it's fun to drive, with so many different pathways and tight turns and so on. Like, when me and my brothers play this track, we actually try and always get on the top of the wall, and it's harder than you think, and it's just so much fun. It's silly Mario Kart fun, and they did that by changing the track so much to basically be brand new, and sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's bad, but in this case, it's absolutely fantastic. 18th, Electrodrome. The brilliant sequel to Music Park, which we'll see later on the list. This magnificent course doesn't quite match up to its predecessor, but it does one hell of a job in bringing its own incredible identity as you race through the music in this incredible track that just works perfectly. The highlight to me definitely has to be the anti-gravity wall near the beginning, where you literally leave little sound marks whilst you're driving, and honestly I think that perfectly encapsulates this track. It's just a lot of fun and a funky good time for everyone involved. 17th, Sunshine Airport. For so long when making this list, this track was stuck on the top of A tier. Nothing else could match up to it, and anything that could always got put into S tier. And that's just a testament to how good this track is, mixing just the coolest theme of racing on a literal airport with the quirkiness of Mario Kart. I mean, whether you're starting off at a terminal or going through the crates being packaged up, or of course soaring down the runway straight into a plane, this course has it all and deserves to be all the way up here at the very top. 16th, Peach Gardens. One of those maps that will go down in Mario Kart history, and yet somehow they managed to make it even better before. Peach Gardens is basically the perfect Princess Peach map that isn't just like, oh, look at her castle. Like, this is such Princess Peach core, from the incredible landscapes to the beautifully sculptured bushes, to of course the rather strange inclusion of a piranha plant and chain chomp, which fair enough Peach, that's pretty extreme, but I get it. However, what they do with this track when you go backwards, it doesn't change much, but somehow it makes it even more brilliant than before. Gliding through the bushes segment, or making the starting shortcut now the ending shortcut, and then the fountain section finishing up. Look, what I'm basically saying is this is one beautiful track, and evidently a lot of people agree with me, because it totally deserves to be in A tier. 15th, Toad Harbor. Damn, this just gives me the feeling of Mario Kart 8. What a course. Honestly, Toad Harbor is exactly what every city course should be aiming for. This is the best city track, without it even trying to be, basically being the ideal version of San Francisco. And whether it's the wonderful market section or the brilliant downhill race to the finish, dodging between trams and getting as many boosts and ramps as possible, it's just superb, and 100% should be this high. I mean, let me say it once again, this outdoes every single city track without even trying, and that is an achievement worth having, even if it's kind of an easy one. Again, look at me, I'm even jabbing at the city tracks all the way in 15th. 14th, Mushroom Gorge. What did you expect? It's just another absolutely brilliant Wii track that's been translated perfectly to Deluxe in the Booster Course DLC. Mushroom Gorge has it all, from the incredible shortcuts that have literally gone down as legend, they are that good, to the incredibly but rewarding gameplay, to being just such a great theme. I mean, the Mario universe having a Mushroom Gorge, like, it just makes sense. I mean, this could be a level in any Mario game and no one would bat an eyelid. It's so fun, it's so awesome, it'll go down in legend yet again. But now we've reached our S tier tracks, which are just superb. Like, these are the top dogs. I mean, they're not the top dogs, but they are incredible. And we start with 13th, Music Park. We mentioned it before with Electrodrome, but Music Park is a masterpiece. Like, who would have thought using karting to make music was a good idea? And how come they aren't the head of Nintendo at this point? Because it's genius. Like, just incredible. I mean, I haven't talked enough about it yet, but the music in this game is just beyond fantastic. The fact they got an actual orchestra to make all the songs is just incredibly special, and they downright blew it away with this track, making you feel like you're making music, like you're in a game, fully immersed, and it's just beyond genius. It deserves so much of a spot up here with all the greats, because it's a masterpiece. 12th, Wild Woods. We talked about how rubbish of a race Ice Ice Outpost was for an original DLC course, but on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have Wild Woods, which literally starts with you going up a tree. Like, if you like Shy Guy Falls, this is on another level. And that's just the start, because whether you're gliding through a wooden society or jumping through lily pads, this race screams personality, and it just continues to give so much throughout the race, and I just love it so much, and evidently everyone else did, because it's a massive win for the Wild Woods. 11th place, Waluigi Stadium. You know what Nintendo do really well? Waluigi tracks. Like, these are again and again and again some of the best tracks in all of the games. It's brilliant, and yet again with Stadium it's superb, killing it once again. Like, it's just so much better than any of the other Stadium tracks by far, because like, it actually feels like an event going on, like something thousands of fans would want to go and see, and it's unique to this game. It just has so much personality, and the Muddy Battle Ready track is just wonderful. And whether you're jumping through the half pipes or taking tight, chaotic, muddy turns or jumping your way to victory, it's just a fun time for all and absolutely deserves to be here. But it's just missing out on the top 10, which starts with 10th place, DK Mountain. The best thing about DK Mountain is that every time we thought about it as a track when making this list, it just kept going up and up. Like, it was originally in a high B tier position, but the more and more people got involved, it just kept going up the list. And well, look at it now in the top 10. And you know what? It deserves it. It doesn't do anything crazy, but it's just such a good track. Going down a mountain, you know what? That's just a cool idea. especially when it's such a grumpy, funny looking mountain such as this one. And whilst I know it was originally from the GameCube, it definitely feels much more like the Wii version, and it still has so much fun from there. Again, another brilliant end shortcut that requires skill to take as well, and just a great addition to the game via the DLC pack. Like, it turns out all you have to do to make a great Mario Kart track is just go down a hill, and it just works. But more on that later. 9th place, Tick-Tock Clock. It's going to become very clear with these last few races that if you decide to make a course based on being small, then you're onto a winner. Because who wouldn't want to race around a freaking clock? That's just genius. I mean, I know it's based on the Super Mario 64 level, but it's still just incredible how they've done all this. How everything comes together with tons of amazing shortcuts that are literally on clock hands, as well as just a brilliant design from having to dodge the pendulums to flying over the working parts. Basically what I'm saying is this is a brilliant track that definitely deserves to be this high on the list. 8th place, DK Summit. Yet another track that comes back from Wii, and yet again, just as good. DK Summit is fun whether you're launching up the mountain, doing all the chaotic jumps, the half-pipe finish, and of course, the massive skip, which is just incredible. I'm so glad they kept it in this game. I mean, beyond anything, it's just as perfect as it was before. Like, I feel like I'm playing DK Summit Wii yet again, just with better graphics. I guess the only thing keeping it down this far is it's kind of got a better version now, which we haven't got to yet. But it's still a brilliant time that I absolutely love, and so many others do as well. 7th place, Rainbow Road Wii. To me, Rainbow Road Wii is probably the most legendary Mario Kart circuit ever. Like, this was my David vs Goliath when I was a kid. This is the one track I had to train again and again and again to be semi-decent at, to even try and fight the CPU. And whilst this version is a little easier, it still has the majestic aura. Like, this is just one of those tracks that lives in the memory forever. Something that sort of lives outside of Mario Kart. Like, it's got its own legacy, which is incredible. And whilst it's not as hard this game, it does replace that with a ton of fun, with so many cool fun tricks to do, as well as how the gravity works on this track, which is absolutely amazing and adds so much to the experience overall. And whilst it doesn't make our best of the best tier, it is at the top of S tier for a reason, as we now head to those tracks that go beyond Mario Kart to become art in themselves. Starting with 6th place, Rainbow Road 3DS. This Rainbow Road is just incredible. Nintendo decided to just go full out this time, with this being much more than a Rainbow Road, but instead an exploration of space. Whether you're driving on the rings of Saturn or floating on the moon, while still mixing the incredible Rainbow Roadness, this is just a brilliant addition to this game. I mean, seriously, this has to be the hardest Mario Kart goes in terms of absolute epicness. It just screams this sort of legendariness that nothing can come close to. Like, damn Nintendo, you didn't need to go this hard. But even so, it isn't at the very top. And if I were to make a theory on that, it would probably be because that damn last corner. Like, why is it so hard? I don't understand how one corner in this game can just make me not understand anything before. Like, it's why does it exist? Why is that last corner a thing? Also, you know, the others are probably more fun to drive, but also that last corner. 5th place, Maple Treeway. One of those races that just constantly sits in the mind Maple Treeway is yet another Wii track that is translated perfectly to Mario Kart 8. And whether it's its theme that's just so amazing, racing on trees through the middle of autumn, or just how fun it is to drive, Maple Treeway brings so much to this game. You have to dodge through wigglers, or do some of the coolest trick jump evers through hairpin turns, or soaring back down to the starting line, getting ready to do little tricks off the tree stumps to try and pull off an advantage on your way to victory. This track even has its own secret section at the start that just brings so much charm to it. I certainly didn't expect it to be number one from all the Wii tracks, but when it was voted for, I think it just makes so much sense. This is a legendary track that deserves so much praise. 4th place, Squeaky Clean Sprint. So we just talked about how Maple Treeway brings so much personality and charm into this game. So what would be one level above it? Well, it would be driving through a bathroom, where we dive through a dirty plug hole and use toilet water to propel ourselves to victory. Squeaky Clean Sprint should absolutely not work as a Mario Kart track. It's such a stupid idea, and yet Nintendo not only made it work, but they went beyond to make this one of the best tracks in the entire game. This bathroom brings fun to a whole different level as we jump through bathtubs and travel through drain pipes and soar over toilets. And somehow it just works perfectly. Like, I'm not going to pretend to know how this dumb idea works so well, but let me tell you, it goes above and beyond. And that's why it's here in the best tier. Because it's the best, silliest track ever. Although, there's 3 more themes that are maybe just a bit cooler. Starting with 3rd place, Ribbon Road. This, in my opinion, is the best theme ever. Like, Mario Kart being a kid's toy track is just a superb idea that they should have made so much earlier. Like, that concept is just brilliant, and with it, they cook. The whole background being a kid's playroom is just incredible, and there's so many cool things to look at and little Easter eggs that just give so much life. It also helps with the ebbs and flows of the actual race, which is a lot of fun, from the first and second section getting more and more difficult, to the craziness of the last section with its cool shortcuts that take a lot of skill to make. But honestly, the theme of this being a toy track is what makes this level so much. It's just brilliant and definitely deserves its spot in the top 3 because it's the best in the entire game. Besides maybe 2nd place, Waluigi Pinball. What is there to say really? Waluigi Pinball is just one of those Mario Kart tracks where you just say the name and people go, oh, I love that track. And even now in 2024, where you get a dozen people to rate 96 tracks, it still manages to outrank literally all but one. It's crazy, it's fun, the music is a bop, it's chaotic. I mean, from the offset, you're driving down a pinball machine, trying to dodge the pinball as it flies down towards the centre. It's just brilliant. And all the turns are superbly fun, and with the Mario Kart 8 double item boxes, they're just placed perfectly, which makes it so much better. And then you get the utter chaos as you dodge the craziness at the end, with pinballs flying and dodging the bumpers, all whilst you and your rivals try to grab the victory as well. What more could you want? Waluigi truly does win, with all his tracks being bangers over and over again. But even with this being an incredible, near-perfect track, it couldn't get the win. Because in front of it is perhaps the greatest Mario Kart track in history. 1st place, Mount Wario. What more can I say? I think without a question, Mount Wario is by far the best Mario Kart track, maybe ever. And you may question that, But when I say Mount Wario takes all the elements of some of the best track designs in history, not only from this game, but all of Mario Kart, it just all ends up making so much sense. From taking inspiration from DK Mountain or DK Summit or Waluigi Pinball and so many other incredible tracks, it just mixes them all together and creates an epic finale that's somehow in the middle of all the championships. What it manages to do in only a few minutes, from taking us from the very top of a mountain, literally starting the race by jumping off a plane, and then whether you're skating on ice, flying through a cave, driving on the side of a dam, like damn how cool is that, or even the incredible last section that makes you feel like you're in the Olympics, till you glide down the ski jump to the end, this track is just constantly proving to be utter brilliance. I mean, the theme of starting atop a mountain and then just going down and down as it gets cooler and cooler as a level. God, I love this track. And whilst we're at it, the music. Like, this track is on a whole different level when it comes to the music. The orchestra just cooked so much with this one. Like, it's a banger. I listen to it on the regular, and there's that one video where all the Mario Kart characters are doing it, and it's just legendary. Just like this track, which is just awe-inspiring. Like, honestly, I get inspiration from this track. It is so, so good. And I definitely think it's the gold standard of all the Mario Kart tracks. And that's why so many people voted for it. And it might not be your number one, but you absolutely have to respect how amazing it is. But with that, we're now through the full 96 tracks. This video took so long to make, so if you haven't already, please like and subscribe and leave your top 10 tracks in the comment section below, because I'd love to see your guys' opinions. I need to give a massive thank you to my wonderful, wonderful girlfriend and editor of this video, Debbie, for all the help that she gave making this experience possible. We've literally been working on this video for months, from ranking all the tracks with our chat on our joint streaming account, separated by pixels, to months of writing and editing, and it's been a huge process, so a big thank you to her. As well as a big thank you to WubDub for yet another incredible thumbnail, which is just superb. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. And as always, peace.